Billionaire CEO rejected her triplets 6 years later. He saw her at a luxury gala with their new dad. Olivia, he said, her name falling from his lips like a forgotten prayer. His eyes widening as he took in the sight of her standing beside another man. Time seemed to freeze in the grand ballroom as Maxwell Barrett, one of the world's most powerful CEOs, found himself face to face with the woman he had cruelly dismissed from his office 6 years earlier when she told him she was pregnant with his triplets. "Maxwell," she acknowledged, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "It's been a long time." His gaze shifted to the distinguished man beside her, whose hand rested protectively at the small of her back, then to the gleaming wedding band on her finger. "I don't believe we've met," Maxwell said, his composed exterior betraying only the slightest crack in his voice. "James Harrington," her husband replied, extending his hand with professional courtesy. "Olivia's husband." Maxwell's knuckles whitened as he accepted the handshake. "And the children?" he asked, the question hanging between them like a live wire. "Our children are thriving," James answered with quiet confidence, emphasizing the word "our" with unmistakable meaning. "They call me Dad." Have you ever wondered what happens when a person who once threw away the greatest gift in life is forced to face the consequences of their choices? When a powerful man who rejected his own flesh and blood comes face to face with the family they've become without him. This is the story of 3 innocent children, a mother's extraordinary strength, and the true meaning of fatherhood that has nothing to do with DNA. Thank you, my amazing viewers, for helping Timeless Love Tales grow beyond 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to me. Each like, comment, and share has brought us to this milestone together. I pray that God blesses you abundantly in every area of your life, that you find strength in your struggles, peace in your storms, and joy in your journey. May your homes be filled with love, your hearts with purpose, and your lives with meaningful connections. As we continue to explore these stories of redemption and second chances together, I pray you experience the same grace and restoration in your own relationships. Thank you for being part of this growing family. Your presence here is a blessing I don't take for granted. Here's to many more stories that touch our hearts and remind us of what truly matters. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing a tale of heartbreak, redemption, and the family bonds that define us. If you've ever had to face someone who once broke your heart, give this video a like, and let's dive into this remarkable journey. The Celestial Grand Hotel glittered like a diamond against the night sky, its crystal chandeliers visible through floor-to-ceiling windows as limousines deposited the city's elite onto the red carpet. Olivia Reed smoothed the silk of her emerald gown, a nervous habit she thought she'd conquered years ago. Tonight marked her first appearance in high society since the scandal that had once defined her life. "You look beautiful," whispered James beside her, his steady hand at the small of her back. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Olivia met her husband's concerned gaze with a smile that conveyed more confidence than she felt. "It's been 6 years. I'm not hiding anymore." As their car pulled to the entrance, Olivia's thoughts drifted to the last time she'd attended the annual Barrett Foundation Gala. She'd been 26 then, secretly pregnant and desperately in love with Maxwell Barrett, the foundation's billionaire patron and CEO of Barrett Global Investments. Tonight, at 32, she returned as Olivia Reed Harrington, renowned pediatric researcher, wife to neurosurgeon James Harrington, and mother to 3 remarkable 6-year-olds who were the center of her universe. The triplets Maxwell had rejected before they were even born. "Dr. Reed Harrington," called a photographer as they stepped onto the carpet. "Over here, please." James squeezed her hand reassuringly as they posed. This attention wasn't for the old scandal. It was for her groundbreaking research on childhood immunological disorders, which had recently earned her the prestigious Hoffman Award. The very reason they'd been invited tonight. "You've earned this moment," James murmured as they entered the grand ballroom. "Your work is changing lives." Olivia nodded, drawing strength from his unwavering support. James had been there when no one else was, first as her colleague, then friend, and finally, the man who had shown her what real love looked like. The man who had embraced her children as his own from the moment he entered their lives. The ballroom was a symphony of wealth and power, with conversations flowing as freely as the champagne. Olivia accepted a glass from a passing server, using the moment to scan the room. Would he be here? The foundation still bore his family name, though Maxwell had stepped back from public appearances in recent years, focusing instead on expanding his business empire across Asia and Europe. Olivia Reed. I can hardly believe it. She turned to find Helena Winters, Maxwell's former executive assistant, approaching with genuine warmth in her expression. It's Reed Harrington now, Olivia corrected gently, accepting Helena's embrace. It's good to see you, Helena. And this must be the brilliant surgeon who swept you off your feet, Helena said, extending her hand to James. I've read about your work on pediatric neural regeneration. Remarkable. The real genius in the family is right here, James replied, his pride in Olivia evident. Helena's expression softened. How are the children? They must be getting so big now. 6 going on 16, Olivia laughed. Sophia's already reading at a 4th grade level, Lucas is obsessed with building things, and Emma's our little artist. They're amazing. I've no doubt, Helena said, her voice lowering slightly. You know he asks about them. The simple statement sent a chill through Olivia. Does he? Helena nodded. Not directly, of course, but whenever your research makes the news, I see him reading the articles. I think he... Helena, there you are. A sharp voice interrupted them. The Miyazaki delegation has arrived. And that's when it happened, the moment Olivia had both dreaded and secretly rehearsed for years. Maxwell Barrett appeared beside Helena, his attention initially focused on his assistant. He hadn't changed much in 6 years, still devastatingly handsome with his dark hair now distinguished by silver at the temples. His tailored tuxedo accentuating the athletic build he maintained despite his demanding schedule. Power and confidence radiated from him like heat from a flame. Then he turned and their eyes met. The encounter that followed was brief but loaded with tension. The formal introduction to James, the stiff congratulations on her award, the awkward silence broken only by Helena's skilled intervention. When Maxwell was called away to greet his mother, Olivia felt as though she'd survived the first round of a battle she hadn't prepared for. He never got over you, you know, Helena said quietly as Maxwell walked away. Not really. He made his choice, Olivia replied, the old pain surfacing despite her best efforts. We've all moved on. But had they? As Olivia and James made their way to their assigned table, she couldn't help but feel Maxwell's gaze following her across the room. The weight of their shared history, the unresolved questions, the paths not taken. All of it hung in the air like an invisible cloud. To understand how Olivia Reed had transformed from Maxwell Barrett's discarded girlfriend to the accomplished Dr. Reed Harrington, we need to step back and witness the life she built from the ashes of rejection. The morning after Maxwell had security escort her from his office, Olivia woke in her apartment feeling hollow. At 26, she had been a rising star in immunology research, respected in her field but virtually unknown outside of it. Her relationship with Maxwell had been kept relatively private. He valued his public image as an unattached bachelor too much to make their connection official in the press. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach, the reality of carrying triplets not yet fully processed. Multiple heartbeats, the ultrasound technician had said with excitement. 3 distinct little lives growing inside her. A miracle, statistically speaking. A miracle Maxwell had dismissed as an inconvenience. This pregnancy doesn't fit into my 5-year plan, he had said, his voice cold and detached as he stared at the ultrasound images she'd proudly presented. I'm expanding into Asian markets next quarter, opening offices in Singapore and Tokyo. I don't have time for 1 child, let alone 3. But we've talked about having a family someday, Olivia had argued, still believing this was just shock talking. I know it's happening sooner than we planned, but someday was a theoretical future, Olivia. Not now. Not 3 at once. He had straightened his tie, a gesture she now recognized as his tell when emotionally retreating. I'll have my lawyers draw up a settlement. You'll be taken care of financially, provided you're discreet. The memory of what followed still made her stomach clench. Her refusal of his settlement. His cold fury at being challenged. The security guards appearing at his office door. The humiliation of being walked out of the building she'd worked in for 3 years. Colleagues watching in confusion. "Dr. Reed, your 9 o'clock is here." The voice of her research assistant pulled Olivia back to the present, to her lab at Westlake Medical Center, where she'd rebuilt her career from scratch after leaving Barrett Biomedical Research Institute. She'd been 7 months pregnant with triplets when she'd secured this position, her growing reputation in the field just barely outweighing the obvious concerns about hiring a single woman about to have 3 newborns. "Thank you, Aiden. I'll be right there." Her office walls were covered with framed achievements, her published research, awards, recognition from peers. But the most precious items were the 3 framed handprints on her desk, labeled Sophia, Lucas, and Emma, taken on their 5th birthday. A daily reminder of why she pushed herself so hard, why failure had never been an option. The triplets had arrived 8 weeks premature, each weighing less than 4 pounds. The NICU became Olivia's second home for 2 months as her tiny babies fought to grow stronger. Those days blurred together in her memory. The constant beeping of monitors, the fear each time an alarm sounded, the precious moments when she could hold each fragile infant against her skin. It was during those long NICU nights that Olivia's research focus crystallized. The triplets, especially Emma, showed signs of immune system challenges that fascinated her scientifically even as they terrified her maternally. She began documenting everything, forming hypotheses, reading every available study on immune development in multiples. When a mysterious anonymous trust appeared, covering the astronomical medical bills that her insurance wouldn't, Olivia was too exhausted and grateful to question it deeply. She assumed it was from her parents, who had mortgaged their retirement home to help her, though they denied establishing any trust. Only years later would she learn the truth about those funds. Bringing the triplets home to her small apartment had been both joyous and overwhelming. 3 of everything, cribs, car seats, high chairs, crammed into a space designed for 1 person. 3 feeding schedules, 3 diaper changes, 3 different cries that she quickly learned to distinguish. "How do you do it all?" her mother had asked during one of her weekly visits to help. Olivia, running on 2 hours of sleep and still reviewing research papers during rare quiet moments, had smiled tiredly. "I don't have a choice, Mom. They need me." What she didn't say was that proving Maxwell wrong had become a driving force. Every milestone the triplets reached, every research breakthrough she achieved, felt like a victory against his dismissal. She would succeed without him, without his money, without his name. Her children would thrive despite his rejection. By the triplets' 1st birthday, Olivia had published her first major paper on immune system development in multiples, drawing on her observations of her own children. By their 2nd, she had secured a research grant to expand her studies. By their 3rd, she had met James Harrington, the pediatric neurosurgeon who would change everything. James entered their lives professionally first, consulting on Lucas's case when the little boy showed signs of a minor neurological issue affecting his fine motor skills. Unlike other specialists who spoke around Olivia or simplified their explanations, James addressed her as both a mother and a fellow medical professional. "Your observations about the connection between his immune responses and motor function are fascinating," he had said during their 2nd meeting. "Have you considered publishing on this specific correlation?" That conversation led to collaboration, which led to coffee discussions, which eventually led to James asking if he could take her to dinner. A real dinner, not hospital cafeteria food eaten between patient rounds. Their first date had been interrupted 3 times by her babysitter calling with questions about the triplets. Rather than showing frustration, James had smiled at each call. "They're lucky to have a mother who's so responsive," he'd said after the 3rd call. "Would it be easier if we had dinner at your place next time? I make a decent pasta, and I'd love to meet them." That dinner at home had been chaotic. Emma spilling juice, Lucas building a tower of pasta, Sophia peppering James with questions about the brain. Instead of being overwhelmed, James had engaged with each child individually, answering Sophia's questions seriously, helping Lucas improve his tower's structural integrity, and making Emma laugh by pretending the juice spill was a science experiment. "You're good with them," Olivia had observed after the triplets were finally asleep. "They make it easy," James had replied. "They're extraordinary kids, Olivia. Like their mother." Their relationship progressed slowly, mindful of the children's needs and Olivia's understandable caution. James never pushed, never rushed, never tried to replace a father figure the triplets had never known. He simply showed up, consistently and lovingly, for all four of them. When Lucas struggled with physical therapy exercises for his motor skills, James designed games that made the work fun. When Sophia became obsessed with how the brain worked, he brought child-friendly anatomy books. When Emma had nightmares, he taught Olivia techniques to help calm the little girl's active imagination. "Why us?" Olivia had asked him once after nearly a year of dating. "You could have a simpler life with someone without all this baggage." James had looked genuinely confused. "Baggage? You mean the three most fascinating children I've ever met and their brilliant mother who's revolutionizing our understanding of pediatric immunology? That's not baggage, Olivia. That's treasure." By the time James proposed, when the triplets were 4, they had already formed their own relationships with him. The proposal itself involved all 3 children, each carrying a tiny box containing a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, asked, "Will you marry us?" The wedding was small but joyful, with Sophia, Lucas, and Emma playing starring roles. 6 months later, James legally adopted the triplets, giving them his last name alongside Olivia's, a hyphenated identity that honored both their mother's journey and their new family unit. "Do we have to call you Dad now?" Sophia had asked James after the adoption was finalized, her serious little face scrunched in concentration. "You can call me whatever feels right to you," James had answered honestly. "My feelings won't be hurt either way." It was Lucas who first used the word, about a month later, when James helped him finally master riding a bike without training wheels. "Look, Dad, I'm doing it," he had called out, the word falling naturally from his lips. Sophia and Emma followed suit in their own time, each finding their own moment when James no longer felt like enough to describe the man who had chosen to be their father in every way that mattered. By the time the invitation to the Barrett Foundation Gala arrived, addressed to Dr. Olivia Reed Harrington and Dr. James Harrington, the triplets were thriving 6-year-olds with no knowledge of their biological father. As far as they knew, their family had always been just as it was: Mom, Dad, and the 3 of them, a unit forged through love rather than obligation. The night before the gala, after the children were asleep, Olivia had shown James the invitation, her hands trembling slightly. "We don't have to go," James had said immediately. "Your research stands on its own. You don't need the Barrett Foundation's recognition." "But I do need their funding," Olivia had replied pragmatically. "The next phase of the study requires resources that other grants can't cover. And besides," she had taken a deep breath, "I'm tired of avoiding places because he might be there. The children are secure, we're happy. My work is respected. It's time to stop letting the past dictate our choices." James had studied her face, searching for any doubt. "And if he's there, if he approaches you, then I'll be polite, professional, and brief," Olivia had answered with more confidence than she felt. "He's just another potential donor now. Nothing more." But standing in the celestial grand ballroom, watching Maxwell Barrett take the stage for the Foundation's annual address, Olivia realized she had underestimated the emotional impact of seeing him again. The way he commanded attention, the familiar cadence of his speech, the subtle gestures she once knew intimately, all of it sent unwelcome ripples of memory through her. "Tonight, we celebrate not just philanthropy, but innovation," Maxwell was saying, his voice filling the room. "Breakthroughs that change lives. Discoveries that offer hope where once there was none." His eyes found hers in the crowd, and for a moment, it felt as though everyone else disappeared. The Barrett Foundation has always believed in supporting visionaries, those rare individuals who see possibilities others miss. This year, we're honored to announce a new initiative focused specifically on childhood immunological disorders, with an initial endowment of $50 million. Murmurs rippled through the audience. This was Olivia's exact field of research, the focus of her life's work. The coincidence seemed too precise to be accidental. The initiative will be led by a steering committee of experts, Maxwell continued, including this year's Hoffman Award recipient, Dr. Olivia Reed Harrington, if she's willing to accept the position. All eyes turned to Olivia, who sat frozen in surprise. James squeezed her hand under the table, a silent question in his touch. This was an incredible opportunity for her research, for the children she hoped to help, but it would mean working closely with Maxwell. With practiced composure, Olivia offered a polite nod of acknowledgement, neither accepting nor declining the unexpected offer. Maxwell's mouth quirked in the barest hint of a smile before he continued with his speech, outlining other foundation initiatives and recognizing key donors. "He's still trying to control the narrative," James observed quietly. "And using my research to do it," Olivia agreed, her mind racing with implications. The funding would accelerate her work by years, potentially helping thousands of children, including those with conditions similar to what her own triplets had faced in their early development. As the speech concluded and Maxwell left the stage, Olivia excused herself from the table. "I need a moment," she told James, who nodded in understanding. She made her way to a quiet alcove off the main ballroom, needing space to process the unexpected turn of events. The alcove opened onto a small balcony overlooking the hotel's illuminated gardens, and Olivia stepped out into the cool night air, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. "You always did prefer fresh air to crowded rooms." She turned to find Maxwell standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Some things don't change," she acknowledged, maintaining her distance. "That was quite an announcement." "The Foundation has been planning this initiative for months," he said, stepping onto the balcony but respecting the space between them. "Your research made you the obvious choice to lead it. And the fact that I'm the mother of your children had nothing to do with it?" The words escaped before she could censor them, hanging in the air between them like an accusation. Maxwell's composure slipped, revealing a flash of the raw emotion beneath. "I deserved that." "You didn't answer the question." He moved to the balcony railing, looking out at the gardens below. "Would you believe me if I said your work stands on its own merits? That any personal connection was secondary to your professional qualifications?" "Once, perhaps," Olivia replied, "before you made it abundantly clear that you wanted nothing to do with me or our children." Maxwell's knuckles whitened as he gripped the railing. "I made the biggest mistake of my life that day." The simple admission, spoken without pretense, caught Olivia off guard. For years, she had imagined this confrontation, had rehearsed what she would say if given the chance. But now, faced with his unexpected vulnerability, the carefully prepared speeches evaporated. "Why?" she asked finally. "I've never understood why. We were planning a future together. Then I told you about the triplets, and suddenly I was being escorted from your office by security." Maxwell turned to face her, his expression pained. "It wasn't about the children, Olivia. Not the way you think." "Then what was it about?" "Because this pregnancy doesn't fit into my 5-year plan," seemed pretty clear at the time. "I was terrified," he admitted, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she remembered from their time together. "Not of fatherhood itself, but of failing at it. Of becoming my father." Olivia frowned. Maxwell rarely spoke of his father, who had died when he was 12. "Your father? You barely knew him." "I knew enough." His voice hardened. "The gambling, the drinking, the women. My mother protected me from the worst of it, but I saw how he destroyed everything he touched. How he'd disappear for months, then return with grand gestures and empty promises." He paused, seeming to struggle with the weight of old memories. "When you told me about the triplets, all I could think was that I carried his blood, his weaknesses. That sooner or later, I would destroy you and those children just as he destroyed my mother." "So you rejected us first?" Olivia said softly, beginning to understand. "To spare us the pain of your inevitable failure." "It sounds pathetic when you say it like that," Maxwell acknowledged with a bitter smile. "But yes, in that moment, pushing you away seemed like the kindest thing I could do." "Kindest?" Olivia's voice rose slightly. Do you have any idea what those first years were like? Working full-time while caring for 3 premature infants? The medical bills? The sleepless nights? The judgment from people who thought I was irresponsible for raising triplets alone. Maxwell flinched at each question. Helena kept me informed, he said quietly, about the complications, the hospital stays. I set up the anonymous trust for their medical expenses. Olivia stared at him in shock. That was you? The children's trust that covered their specialized care. He nodded. It was the least I could do after everything. I couldn't bring myself to be the father they deserved, but I could ensure they had the care they needed. Why anonymously? Why not tell me? Would you have accepted my help if you'd known it came from me? He challenged. After the way I treated you? Olivia had to admit he was right. Her pride would have prevented her from accepting anything from the man who had rejected her and their unborn children. The anonymous trust had been a lifeline during those difficult early years, allowing her to focus on her research while ensuring the triplets received the best possible care. They're thriving now, she said after a moment. The early interventions made all the difference. Something like hunger flashed in Maxwell's eyes. Tell me about them, please. Olivia hesitated, torn between protecting her children and acknowledging their right to know about their biological father. They're extraordinary, she said finally. Sophia is our little scientist, always experimenting, asking questions no one expects from a 6-year-old. Lucas is the builder, creating elaborate structures from anything he can find. And Emma sees beauty everywhere, captures it in her drawings. Our little scientist, Maxwell repeated softly, catching the pronoun. Your husband. He's good to them? James is their father in every way that matters, Olivia replied firmly. He's been there for first steps, first words, nightmares, triumphs. He loves them unconditionally. The pain that crossed Maxwell's face was unmistakable. As he should. A silence fell between them, filled with the weight of what might have been. In the distance, music from the ballroom drifted through the night air, a poignant reminder of the world continuing beyond their private reckoning. I should get back to James, Olivia said finally, and you have guests waiting. Before you go, Maxwell said, reaching into his jacket pocket, I'd like you to have this. He extended an envelope, which Olivia accepted with hesitation. What is it? Information about the research initiative. The full proposal, funding structure, expectations. Review it with your team. Make your decision based on the merits, not on our history. Olivia nodded, appreciating the professional courtesy. I will. And Olivia, he added as she turned to leave, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider allowing me to meet them someday? Not as their father, that role belongs to James now, but perhaps as a friend of the family? Someone who could be part of their lives in some small way. The request, delivered with such uncharacteristic humility, caught her off guard. The Maxwell Barrett she had known 6 years ago would have demanded, not asked, would have leveraged his power and influence to get what he wanted. This man before her seemed changed, tempered by regret and time. I don't know, she answered honestly. That's not a decision I can make alone. James and I would need to discuss it, and ultimately, as the children get older, they'll have a say in who is part of their lives. Of course, Maxwell nodded, accepting her response without argument. Thank you for hearing me out. It's more than I deserve. As Olivia returned to the ballroom, she found James waiting near their table, concern evident in his expression. Everything okay? He asked, studying her face. It's complicated, she replied, showing him the envelope. We have a lot to talk about when we get home. James nodded, his steady presence a balm to her turbulent emotions. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Across the room, Olivia caught sight of Maxwell rejoining his mother and the Japanese delegation. He moved with the same confidence she remembered, but there was something different about him now. A weight to his shoulders that hadn't been there before. A depth to his gaze that spoke of lessons learned the hard way. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after devastating rejection, hit that like button. The journey Olivia took from that moment in Maxwell's office to becoming the accomplished Dr. Reed Harrington is a testament to the strength we can find when pushed to our limits. To truly understand the magnitude of what happened at the gala, we need to go back to the day everything changed. The day Olivia's life split into before and after. 6 years earlier, Olivia had walked into Maxwell Barrett's executive office with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. At 26, she was one of the youngest researchers at Barrett Biomedical Research Institute, having been personally recruited by Maxwell after he heard her present at a conference. Their professional relationship had quickly evolved into a personal one, though they kept it private at Maxwell's insistence. "I have something to tell you," she'd said, unable to contain her smile as she placed the ultrasound images on his desk. Maxwell had picked up the first image, his expression curious. "What am I looking at?" "Our babies," Olivia had replied, emphasizing the plural. "3 of them, actually. The doctor says it's fraternal triplets." "Can you believe it?" She had expected shock, perhaps even concern about the timing. They hadn't been trying for a family yet. What she hadn't expected was the way his face had hardened, how he'd placed the image down as if it might burn him. "Triplets?" he'd repeated, the word sounding foreign on his tongue. "You're certain?" 3 distinct heartbeats, Olivia had confirmed, her initial excitement beginning to falter at his reaction. "I know it's unexpected, but..." "Unexpected." Maxwell had stood abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked the city he was rapidly conquering. "It's impossible, Olivia. This pregnancy doesn't fit into my 5-year plan. I'm expanding into Asian markets next quarter, opening offices in Singapore and Tokyo. I don't have time for 1 child, let alone 3. The coldness in his voice had sent a chill through her. "I thought we talked about having a family someday." "Someday was a theoretical future," he'd replied without turning to face her. "Not now. Not 3 at once." "So what are you saying?" Olivia had asked, though she already knew the answer from the rigid set of his shoulders. When he finally turned, his expression was that of a stranger, the ruthless businessman she'd heard about but never personally experienced. "I'm saying I'll have my lawyers draw up a settlement. You'll be taken care of financially, provided you're discreet." The implication had hit her like a physical blow. "You think I'm telling you this for money? That I want to be taken care of?" "Be practical, Olivia," Maxwell had said, his tone softening slightly, which somehow made it worse. "Your career is just beginning. 3 babies at once would derail everything you've worked for. The settlement would allow you to make whatever choice you feel is best, without financial pressure." "The only pressure I'm feeling right now is from you," she'd replied, anger replacing her initial hurt. "I didn't come here asking for anything. I came to share news about our children. Children we created together. Children I never agreed to have," he'd countered, his own anger flaring. "Not now. Not like this. Life doesn't always follow a 5-year plan, Maxwell. Sometimes it gives you unexpected gifts. Or unexpected complications," he'd retorted. "My decision is final. Take the settlement, Olivia. It's the sensible solution." She'd stood then, gathering the ultrasound images he'd so casually dismissed. "I don't want your money. I don't need your permission to have these babies. And I certainly don't need a man who sees his own children as complications in my life or theirs." His expression had darkened. "You're being emotional and irrational. Think about what you're saying. How will you manage 3 infants alone? Your career will be over before it begins." "Watch me," she challenged, heading for the door. "These children and I will thrive without you. That's a promise." "Olivia, don't walk out that door," Maxwell had warned, his voice taking on the edge that made business competitors crumble. "If you leave now, that's it. There's no coming back." She'd paused at the threshold, one hand on the doorknob. "The man I thought I loved would never make me choose between him and our children. I guess he never existed." What happened next still burned in her memory. Maxwell picking up his phone, the security guards appearing within minutes, the humiliation of being escorted from the building as colleagues watched in confusion. By the time she reached her apartment, her access badge had been deactivated, her work email shut down, and her personal belongings from her office delivered by courier with clinical efficiency. The following weeks had been a blur of practical challenges. Finding a new position while visibly pregnant with triplets. Securing an apartment she could afford on a reduced salary. Explaining to her parents why the man they'd never met, Maxwell, had always been too busy for family introductions, wouldn't be in the picture. He said what? Her mother had exclaimed when Olivia finally broke down and told her the full story. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I'm not, Olivia had replied, surprising herself with the truth in those words. If this is who he really is, better to know now than after the children are born. Better to build our life without him than with someone who sees them as inconvenient. That determination had carried her through the difficult pregnancy, the premature birth, the terrifying NICU stays, and the exhausting early years. Every time she felt overwhelmed, trying to feed 3 infants while battling sleep deprivation, juggling childcare with research deadlines, stretching her budget to cover the endless expenses of raising triplets. She remembered the promise she'd made walking out of Maxwell's office. We will thrive without you. And against all odds, they had. The anonymous trust that she now knew came from Maxwell had certainly helped with medical expenses, but it was Olivia's relentless drive and the support network she'd built that truly made the difference. Her parents helping whenever they could. Neighbors trading childcare. Colleagues covering when one of the triplets was sick. And eventually, James, whose steady presence had transformed their family in ways she could never have imagined. Now, sitting in the back of the car as they drove home from the gala, Olivia felt the weight of the past and present colliding. James drove in thoughtful silence, giving her space to process the evening's revelations. He was the anonymous donor, she said finally. All those medical bills for the triplets' early interventions, the specialized therapies for Lucas, Emma's immunology treatments. It was Maxwell. James nodded, his eyes on the road. I suspected as much. The trust was too specifically tailored to their needs to be random philanthropy. Why didn't you say anything? Because it didn't matter who was paying, James replied simply. What mattered was that the children got what they needed. And honestly, it seemed like the least he could do after walking away. Olivia studied her husband's profile, marveling at his capacity for pragmatism without bitterness. He wants to meet them, not as their father. He was clear about respecting your role, but as some kind of family friend. James was quiet for a long moment. And how do you feel about that? Conflicted, Olivia admitted. Part of me wants to protect them from ever knowing they were rejected. Another part recognizes they might someday want to know their biological origins. And a small, petty part wants him to see exactly what he threw away. 3 amazing children who are thriving without him. None of those feelings are petty, James assured her, reaching for her hand. They're natural. But this isn't a decision we need to make tonight, or even this month. We can take our time, consider what's best for Sophia, Lucas, and Emma. And the research initiative? Olivia asked, tapping the envelope on her lap. $50 million could change everything for children with immune disorders like Emma's. But it would mean working with the Barrett Foundation. With him. That's a separate question, James said thoughtfully. Can you separate the professional opportunity from the personal history? Would collaborating with Maxwell compromise your research integrity or your peace of mind? These were the questions that kept Olivia awake long after they returned home, after she checked on each sleeping child, after James had fallen asleep beside her. She slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen, making herself tea as she had during countless nights of the triplets' infancy. The house was quiet now, so different from those early days of constant crying and midnight feedings. She took her tea to the living room, where framed photos chronicled their family's journey. The triplets as tiny NICU babies, their first birthday with faces covered in cake, preschool graduations, beach vacations, and in the center, their family portrait from after James's adoption was finalized. 5 smiling faces. Complete family. No empty spaces waiting to be filled. Olivia opened Maxwell's envelope, spreading the proposal documents across the coffee table. The initiative was brilliantly conceived. targeting exactly the research areas she'd been trying to fund for years. The structure would give her significant autonomy, with resources that could accelerate her work by a decade. Most importantly, it could help thousands of children with conditions similar to Emma's. Could she separate the professional opportunity from the personal history? The question echoed in her mind as she reviewed the details. The following morning, Saturday, brought the familiar chaos of family life. Sophia was determined to finish her science project on photosynthesis. Lucas had a soccer game at 10. Emma needed to be dropped at her art class by 11. As Olivia helped Emma select her art supplies, she marveled at how ordinary it all felt. This life they'd built, so far removed from the luxury and power that defined Maxwell Barrett's world. "Mom, can I bring my special markers to art class?" Emma asked, holding up the professional grade set James had given her for her last birthday. "Of course, sweetheart. Just make sure to put your name on the case." Emma nodded seriously, then tilted her head in that perceptive way that sometimes caught Olivia off guard. "You look tired, Mom. Did you have bad dreams?" Olivia smiled, smoothing her daughter's dark curls, so like Maxwell's, though she doubted anyone else would notice the resemblance. "Not bad dreams, just grown-up thoughts keeping me awake." "About your research?" Emma asked. At 6, she already understood that her mother's work was important, that it helped children like her who had special immune systems. "Partly," Olivia acknowledged. "There's a new opportunity that could help my research help even more children." "Then you should do it," Emma said with the simple clarity of childhood. "That's what you always tell us. If we can help someone, we should." Out of the mouths of babes, Olivia thought as she drove Emma to art class later that morning. The triplets had never known their biological father, had never felt his rejection as a personal wound. They were secure in James's love, in the family they had. Perhaps the question wasn't whether Maxwell deserved to know them, but whether they deserved to know the full truth of their origins. Someday, when they were old enough to process it. When James returned from Lucas's soccer game, his shirt still damp with sweat from filling in as assistant coach, Olivia was waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a decision. "I'm going to accept the research position," she said as he sat beside her on the porch swing. "The work is too important to refuse because of personal history." James nodded, unsurprised. "I thought you might. It's a perfect fit for your research goals." As for Maxwell meeting the children, she took a deep breath. "Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But I won't say never. When they're older, if they have questions about their biological origins, I want to be able to give them honest answers." "That seems fair," James agreed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "And in the meantime?" "In the meantime, I'll work with the Barrett Foundation professionally. Keep appropriate boundaries. See if Maxwell's remorse is genuine or just another grand gesture, like the ones his father used to make." James pressed a kiss to her temple. "I trust your judgment. And for what it's worth, I saw his face when he looked at you last night. That wasn't the expression of a man making empty gestures." 3 weeks later, Olivia sat in a conference room at Barrett Foundation headquarters, presenting her research implementation plan to the initiative steering committee. Maxwell sat at the head of the table, professional and attentive, asking insightful questions without any hint of their personal connection. If the other committee members noticed any tension, they gave no indication. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Maxwell remained seated, waiting until they were alone before speaking. "The committee was impressed," he said, maintaining a respectful distance. "Your approach to targeting specific genetic markers is revolutionary." "Thank you," Olivia replied, gathering her presentation materials. "The Foundation's resources will allow us to expand the clinical trials significantly." Maxwell nodded, then hesitated before continuing. "I've been meaning to ask, did you have a chance to discuss my request with James? About meeting the children someday?" Olivia met his gaze directly. "We did, and we've decided that it's not the right time. The triplets are thriving, their world is stable and secure. Introducing you now, in any capacity, would raise questions they're too young to process." Though disappointment flickered across his features, Maxwell nodded in acceptance. I understand. And in the future? The future remains open, Olivia said carefully. When they're older, if they have questions about their biological origins, we'll be honest with them. What happens after that will depend partly on them. That's more than I have any right to hope for, Maxwell acknowledged. Thank you for not shutting the door completely. As Olivia turned to leave, Maxwell spoke again, his voice softer. Olivia? I know words are inadequate, but I truly am sorry. Not just for what I did, but for what I missed. For not being the man you deserved back then. For not being brave enough to face my fears. She paused at the door, considering her response. You know what I've learned raising triplets, Maxwell? That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting with love despite being afraid. It's showing up every day, even when you're exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified of making mistakes. Like you did, he said quietly. Like James does. Yes, she confirmed. Exactly like that. The months that followed established a new normal. Olivia's research flourished with the Foundation's backing, leading to breakthroughs that made headlines in medical journals. Her professional interactions with Maxwell remained cordial and productive, focused entirely on the work. If he sometimes looked at her with regret in his eyes, neither of them acknowledged it. Life at home continued its beautiful chaos. The triplets thrived in first grade, each developing their distinct personalities and interests. James's neurosurgery practice expanded to include a specialized pediatric unit. Their family grew stronger, their bonds deeper, their future secure in the love they shared. It was nearly a year after the gala when the invitation arrived. A children's science fair sponsored by the Barrett Foundation, showcasing young innovators from across the city. Sophia had been selected as a finalist for her project on plant communication, an honor that had her bouncing with excitement for days. Mom, Dad, my project is going to be in a real science fair with real scientists, she exclaimed, waving the invitation. Can we go? Please. Olivia and James exchanged a look, having the silent conversation that parents perfect over time. They both knew Maxwell would likely be there, that this could be the first time he saw the triplets in person. Was it a manipulated situation? Perhaps. But it was also a genuine honor for Sophia, an opportunity she had earned through her own brilliance. Of course we'll go, James said, lifting Sophia in a celebratory hug. We wouldn't miss it for anything. Can Lucas and Emma come too? Sophia asked, always thinking of her siblings. It's a family event, Olivia confirmed, reading the invitation details. We'll all be there to cheer you on. The science fair was held at the Barrett Foundation's Community Center, a modern facility designed to make science accessible to children from all backgrounds. As they entered the exhibition hall, Olivia felt a familiar tension in her shoulders, scanning the room for Maxwell while helping Sophia set up her display. Dr. Reed Harrington, came Helena's warm voice from behind them. And this must be the brilliant young scientist we've heard so much about. Sophia beamed at the introduction, shaking Helena's hand with the solemnity of a much older child. I'm Sophia Reed Harrington. My project demonstrates how plants communicate stress signals through root systems and airborne chemicals. Impressive, Helena smiled, genuinely charmed. The judges are going to love this. As Helena chatted with Sophia about her methodology, Olivia felt rather than saw Maxwell's approach. He stood at a careful distance, watching the interaction with an expression of wonder and restraint. When their eyes met, he gave a small nod of acknowledgement but made no move to come closer. Throughout the event, Maxwell maintained this respectful distance, present as the Foundation's representative, congratulating all the young scientists, but never singling out Sophia or approaching the family directly. When Sophia was awarded first place in her age group, his applause from the sidelines seemed genuinely proud rather than performative. It was Lucas who bridged the gap, in the unexpected way children often do. As the crowds mingled after the awards ceremony, he approached Maxwell with the directness of a 6-year-old on a mission. "Are you Mr. Barrett?" he asked, looking up at the man whose biological connection to him remained unknown. Maxwell crouched to the boy's eye level, surprise and emotion carefully controlled. "I am. And who might you be?" I'm Lucas Reed Harrington, Sophia's brother. He pointed to where his sister was proudly showing her award to Emma. Your building has really good architecture. I want to design buildings when I grow up too. Do you? Maxwell replied, his voice steady despite the visible impact of this first interaction. That's an excellent career choice. Did you design this building? Lucas asked, gesturing to the soaring ceilings and innovative use of space. I helped with some of the ideas, Maxwell acknowledged. But the real architects did the important work. Would you like to know how they made the ceiling look like it's floating? Lucas nodded eagerly, and for the next few minutes, Maxwell explained the architectural principles in terms a 6-year-old could understand, his focus entirely on the boy's questions and observations. From across the room, Olivia and James watched the interaction, standing close together as they processed this unexpected moment. He's being respectful, James noted quietly. No overstepping, no claiming. Yes, Olivia agreed, feeling a complex mixture of emotions as she watched Maxwell point out design features to her son. Their son, biologically, though James was his father in every way that mattered. He's changed. When Lucas returned to them, bubbling with excitement about cantilevers and support structures, he mentioned casually, Mr. Barrett knows a lot about buildings. He said if I'm still interested when I'm older, he could introduce me to real architects who design skyscrapers. That was kind of him, James said, his arm secure around Lucas's shoulders. Did you thank him? Aha, he's nice. Not scary like some grown-ups in suits. Later, as they prepared to leave, Maxwell approached them directly for the first time, maintaining a professional demeanor despite the emotional undercurrents. Congratulations again, Sophia, he said, addressing the girl directly. Your project showed remarkable insight. The Foundation would be pleased to have you participate in our Young Scientists Summer Program, if your parents approve. Can I, Mom? Dad? Sophia looked up at them with hopeful eyes. We'll look into it, James promised, his hand steady on his daughter's shoulder. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Barrett. It's well-deserved, Maxwell replied, then turned to Olivia. You've raised extraordinary children, Dr. Reed Harrington. They're a credit to both you and your husband. The acknowledgement of James's role was deliberate and sincere, a recognition of the family unit they had built. As Maxwell excused himself to attend to other guests, Olivia felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. On the drive home, with 3 tired children dozing in the back seat, James glanced at Olivia with a questioning expression. You okay? I think I am, she replied, surprising herself with the truth in those words. He didn't try to claim them or impress them. He just met them where they were, respected our boundaries. The way a responsible adult should, James observed. Maybe he has changed. Maybe, Olivia agreed. Or maybe he's finally become the man he could have been all along, if fear hadn't gotten in the way. The following week, a package arrived at their home addressed to Sophia. Inside was a professional-grade microscope with a note on Barrett Foundation letterhead. For our first-place winner. May your scientific curiosity continue to flourish. The Barrett Foundation. No personal message. No overstepping. Just recognition of a child's achievement and encouragement of her passion. Similar packages followed for Lucas and Emma in the months that came. Architecture books for Lucas, art supplies for Emma, always from the Foundation, never personally from Maxwell. It was a delicate dance, this new arrangement. Professional collaboration between Olivia and Maxwell. Occasional Foundation events where the children might interact with him briefly. Small, appropriate acknowledgments of their achievements. All without crossing the boundaries Olivia and James had established, without confusing the triplets about who their family was. 2 years passed this way, with the children growing and thriving, occasionally mentioning Mr. Barrett from the Foundation, but never suspecting his biological connection to them. Olivia's research initiative produced groundbreaking results, helping children around the world with immune disorders similar to Emma's. James's pediatric neurosurgery unit became nationally recognized, partly funded by grants from, ironically, the Barrett Foundation. It was Sophia, ever the scientist, who finally asked the question they had been preparing for. At 8 years old, her school science class had begun studying genetics, and her analytical mind quickly made connections. "Mom," she said one evening as Olivia helped her with homework, "how come Lucas, Emma, and I all have different color eyes? The genetics book says triplets who are fraternal can be as different as any siblings, but we'd still get our eye colors from our biological parents." Olivia took a deep breath, recognizing the moment they had known would eventually come. "That's a very good observation, Sophia. What else does your book say about genetics?" "It says we get half our DNA from our biological mother and half from our biological father." "You're our biological mother, right?" "Yes, I am," Olivia confirmed, her heart racing despite years of mental preparation for this conversation. Sophia's brow furrowed in concentration. "But Dad, is Dad our biological father? Because my eyes are blue like yours, but Lucas has brown eyes, and Emma has hazel eyes that aren't like either of yours." That evening, after consulting with James, they gathered all 3 children for a family meeting. With age-appropriate honesty, they explained that before James came into their lives, Olivia had been in a relationship with another man who was their biological father. "But he wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born," Olivia explained carefully. "And then Dad, James, came into our lives and loved all of us. He chose to be your father in every way that matters." "So we have 2 dads?" Lucas asked, trying to process this new information. "A biological one and a real one? Your dad, James, is your real father," Olivia clarified. "Being a parent is about much more than biology. It's about love, presence, commitment, all the things Dad gives you every day." "Who is our biological father?" Emma asked quietly, her perceptive gaze fixed on Olivia's face. "Do we know him?" Olivia and James exchanged a look, having agreed on how much to share at this stage. "His name is Maxwell Barrett," Olivia said gently. "He runs the Barrett Foundation that sponsors Sophia's science program and the art classes Emma takes." The children's eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Barrett in the nice suits?" Lucas asked incredulously. "The one who told me about buildings?" "Yes," James confirmed, his voice steady and secure. "Mr. Barrett is your biological father. But I want you to know that nothing changes about our family. I am your dad. I love you, and that will never change." "Does he want to be part of our family now?" Sophia asked, always direct. "He respects that we are a family," Olivia explained carefully. "He knows that Dad is your father. But if you have questions about him, or if someday you want to know him better, that's something we can talk about as a family." The conversation continued, with the children asking questions that ranged from practical to profound. Why hadn't he wanted them? Did he regret it now? Did they have grandparents they didn't know? Through it all, James remained a steady presence, never showing insecurity about his role in their lives, reinforcing that family was built on love and choice, not just biology. In the weeks that followed, each child processed the information differently. Sophia approached it scientifically, reading about genetics and inheritance. Lucas seemed largely untroubled, secure in his relationship with James. Emma, the most sensitive of the 3, asked the most questions about Maxwell, curious about the parts of herself that might come from him. When Olivia finally called Maxwell to inform him that the children now knew the basic truth of their biological connection, his response was measured and respectful. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "How did they take it?" "As well as can be expected," Olivia replied. "They have questions, of course. Some we've answered, others will come with time." "And what would you like me to do, if anything?" Maxwell asked, the humility in his question still surprising after all these years. "Continue as you have been," Olivia said after a moment's consideration. "Respectful, appropriate, no pressure. They know who you are now, but they need time to process what that means to them." "Of course," Maxwell agreed immediately. "I'll follow your lead completely. Just please let me know if there's anything they want or need from me. Answers, information about medical history, anything at all." "I will," Olivia promised. "And Maxwell, thank you for respecting our boundaries all this time. It's made this moment easier than it might have been. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a moment before he responded, his voice thick with emotion. I've had 8 years to think about all the ways I failed you in them. Respecting your boundaries is the very least I could do. Life continued its forward momentum. The children's knowledge about Maxwell added a new dimension to their family dynamics, but didn't fundamentally change the love and security they felt with Olivia and James. When they occasionally saw Maxwell at foundation events, there was a new awareness in their interactions, but James remained unquestionably their father. It was Emma who first expressed interest in knowing Maxwell better, approaching Olivia one evening after her art class at the Barrett Foundation Community Center. "Mom, Mr. Barrett, my biological father, he was watching my art class today," she said as they drove home. Not in a scary way. He just stood in the doorway for a minute. When I looked up, he smiled and waved, then left. How did that make you feel? Olivia asked carefully. Emma considered the question with the thoughtfulness that characterized her. Curious, I guess. Miss Helena says he used to paint when he was younger, before he got busy with business stuff. She says that's why he makes sure the foundation has good art programs. I didn't know that about him, Olivia admitted, realizing how little she had known about Maxwell's personal interests during their relationship, how focused they had been on work and ambition. Could I maybe talk to him sometime? About art? Emma asked hesitantly. Not instead of Dad or anything. Just to see if that's where I got it from. That conversation led to a carefully arranged meeting. Emma and Maxwell in the Foundation's art studio, with Olivia present but giving them space to connect over sketchbooks and watercolors. James had supported the arrangement completely, secure enough in his relationship with his daughter to encourage her curiosity about her biological origins. I used to paint to calm my mind, Maxwell explained to Emma as they mixed colors side by side. When business problems seemed too complicated, creating something beautiful helped me think more clearly. That's how I feel too, Emma said, her initial shyness fading as they found common ground. When school gets too noisy or when I'm worried about something, drawing makes everything quiet inside. Watching them together, Olivia was struck by the similarities she had never noticed before. Not just physical traits but mannerisms, the way they both tilted their heads when concentrating, how they used the same precise gestures when explaining something important to them. Similar meetings followed over time, each carefully structured and appropriate. Sophia's interest in Maxwell was more intellectual. She wanted to know about his business achievements, his approach to problem solving. Lucas was initially the least interested, secure in his identity as James's son, but eventually became curious about the Barrett family history, the grandparents he had never known. Through it all, James remained steadfast, encouraging the children's relationships with Maxwell without insecurity or jealousy. They're secure enough in our family to explore these connections, he told Olivia one night after the children were asleep. That's a good thing, not a threat. You're an extraordinary man, James Harrington, Olivia said, resting her head against his shoulder. Most men would find this situation impossible. Most men haven't been blessed with 3 amazing children who call them dad by choice, not obligation, he replied simply. Nothing Maxwell does can change that. As the children's 10th birthday approached, a milestone that seemed impossible when Olivia had been struggling with 3 premature infants, Maxwell requested a meeting with both Olivia and James. They met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near the hospital where James worked. Thank you for seeing me, Maxwell began, his demeanor respectful as always. I wanted to discuss something with both of you before proceeding. We're listening, James said, his arm resting casually across the back of Olivia's chair. The children's birthday is approaching, Maxwell continued. I'd like to establish trust funds for each of them, for education, future security, whatever they might need. Not as a replacement for anything you provide, but as an additional resource they can access when they're older. Olivia and James exchanged a glance, having anticipated something like this eventually. We appreciate the thought, Olivia began carefully, but we've always been clear about maintaining our family's independence. I understand, Maxwell nodded, and I respect that completely. This isn't about control or influence. The trusts would be irrevocable, with you both as trustees until the children turn 25. I would have no access or control over the funds. May I ask why now? James inquired, his tone neutral rather than confrontational. Maxwell considered the question before answering. Because I've spent 10 years trying to make amends for the worst mistake of my life. Because those children deserve every advantage I can provide without overstepping my place. And because... He hesitated, then continued with raw honesty. Because I'm not getting any younger, and I want to ensure they're provided for regardless of what happens to me. The vulnerability in his admission caught both Olivia and James off guard. Maxwell Barrett, the invincible business titan, acknowledging his own mortality, planning for a future where he might not be present. We'll need to review the details, James said after a moment. Any arrangement would need to be structured in a way that respects our role as their parents. Of course, Maxwell agreed immediately. My lawyers can work with yours to ensure everything meets your approval. As they worked out the preliminary details, Olivia observed the interaction between the two men in her children's lives. One who had chosen to be their father in every way that mattered, and one who was trying, however imperfectly, to make amends for his greatest failure. There was no animosity between them, just a shared concern for three children who connected them in ways neither could have anticipated. The trust funds were established with careful boundaries and clear intentions. The children were told about them in age-appropriate terms. Money set aside for college and their future. A gift from Maxwell that acknowledged his biological connection without attempting to buy their affection or usurp James's role. On the triplets' 10th birthday, the Reed Harrington home filled with friends, family, and the joyful chaos of childhood celebration. Among the guests, standing somewhat apart but welcomed nonetheless, was Maxwell Barrett, not as a father claiming his place, but as a family friend acknowledging an important milestone. As the children blew out their candles on 3 separate cakes, Sophia had insisted on chocolate, Lucas on vanilla, and Emma on strawberry, compromises being an essential part of triplet life. Olivia found herself standing between James and Maxwell, the past and present converging in a moment of unexpected harmony. Thank you, Maxwell said quietly, his words meant for both of them, for allowing me to be here, for raising them with such love and wisdom, for being the parents I wasn't brave enough to be. They're extraordinary children, James replied, his confidence as their father absolute and unshakable. We're the fortunate ones. As the party continued around them, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that devastating day in Maxwell's office to this imperfect but peaceful coexistence. The children were thriving, secure in James's unconditional love while beginning to understand and integrate Maxwell's place in their lives. Her research was changing outcomes for children with immune disorders. James's practice was saving lives daily. And Maxwell? He had transformed from the cold, calculating businessman who had rejected his own children to someone capable of genuine remorse and respectful boundaries. Not a father, that role belonged unquestionably to James, but a presence in their lives that added rather than detracted. If you've ever wondered about the true meaning of fatherhood, remember this story. Remember that being a father isn't about biology or wealth or power. It's about showing up every day. It's about loving unconditionally. It's about putting a child's needs above your own fears and ambitions. James Harrington embodied these truths from the moment he entered the triplets' lives, choosing to love them as his own when their biological father had walked away. His strength wasn't in asserting control or demanding recognition, but in providing the secure foundation that allowed the children to explore their complex origins without fear or confusion. Maxwell Barrett learned these lessons too late to claim the title of father, but not too late to make amends in the only ways that truly mattered, with respect, humility, and genuine concern for the children's well-being rather than his own desires. And Olivia? She had kept her promise made in that moment of devastating rejection. She and her children had not just survived without Maxwell Barrett. They had thrived, building a life filled with love, achievement, and security that no amount of wealth could have guaranteed. As the birthday celebration wound down and the guests began to leave, Maxwell approached Olivia one last time. "I should go," he said, maintaining the respectful distance that characterized their interactions. "Thank you again for including me today." "You're welcome," Olivia replied sincerely. The children were glad you could be here. Maxwell nodded, then hesitated before adding, I know I've said this before, but it bears repeating. You were right that day in my office, Olivia, when you promised that you and the children would thrive without me. When you walked away rather than accepting less than you deserved. It was the bravest thing I've ever witnessed, and I've regretted my cowardice every day since. We can't change the past, Olivia said gently, but I'm grateful that we've found a way forward that puts the children's needs first. As am I, Maxwell agreed. More grateful than I can express. As he turned to leave, Emma approached with a small package wrapped in handmade paper. Mr. Barrett? I made this for you, to say thank you for coming to our birthday. Maxwell accepted the gift with visible emotion, carefully unwrapping it to reveal a watercolor painting of the Barrett Foundation Community Center, where Emma took her art classes. It's beautiful, Emma. Thank you. I'll treasure it. Mom says you used to paint too, Emma said, studying his reaction. Before you got busy with business stuff. I did, Maxwell confirmed with a small smile. Perhaps I should make time for it again. You should, Emma nodded seriously. Art makes everything quiet inside when it gets too noisy. That's what you told me. Remember? I remember, Maxwell said softly. You're very wise for 10 years old. That's what Dad always says too, Emma replied, glancing over at James, who was helping Lucas disassemble a particularly complex Lego creation that had been a birthday gift. The simple statement, delivered without any intention to wound, nevertheless captured the essential truth of their situation. James was Dad, the one who had been there for nightmares and triumphs, skinned knees and school projects, everyday moments and milestone achievements. Maxwell was Mr. Barrett, a biological connection, a family friend, an occasional presence, but not their father in any way that truly mattered. As Maxwell said his goodbyes and left the celebration, Olivia watched him walk to his car, still straight-backed and confident in his expensive suit, still the powerful CEO to the outside world, but carrying the weight of his greatest regret with a humility that the Maxwell Barrett of 10 years ago would never have understood. James appeared beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. Everything okay? Yes, Olivia said, leaning into his embrace. Everything is exactly as it should be. And it was. Not perfect, not without complications, but right in all the ways that mattered. A family built on choice rather than obligation. Children secure in the knowledge that they were loved unconditionally. A future open to possibilities rather than constrained by past mistakes. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What makes someone a true parent in your eyes? Is it biology, presence, or something else entirely? Remember, family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes, the strongest family bonds are the ones we choose to create and nurture every single day. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is acknowledging when someone else can give a child what you cannot. Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us what truly matters in life. Love, courage, and the family we build together.